Hello everyone and welcome to lesson 1.3 in our historical investigation unit, and today we're actually going to be working on compiling our research. So by the end of our lesson today you should be able to do the following things. Locate and find sources you need for your investigation. You should be able to properly log your sources into a format that you are most comfortable with, and you should be able to understand what types of sources are considered credible and which ones are not. So before we jump into the meat of this lesson, some things to think about, some notes about your research. So first of all, the entire historical investigation only takes 20 hours. The IB stipulates that we only spend 20 hours on this. So that is why this unit only takes about 13 days. So roughly 13 days is about 20 total hours of instruction. So you only have 2 days in this unit devoted to just research. So that is basically this class currently, and the next class will be nothing but doing research. So use your time wisely. You will need to research to fill gaps as well. So what does this mean? This means that as you're writing your paper, you're going to find areas that you're like, I need a little bit more information on. So you're going to have to find additional sources after you even started writing the paper. So just keep that in mind. That's normal. That's not a deficiency. That's normal. You do not want to fall behind at all at this point, because we're getting ready to start rolling this train out of the depot, and we don't need you to be behind. So make sure that you are working diligently, using your time in class wisely. So if you're using your time in class wisely, then I promise you the things that you're going to have to do at home are going to be much less stressful for you. So please do not procrastinate, because this is something you simply cannot blow off or ask for forgiveness for, as it is a graduation requirement and a course requirement for IB history. So where can you actually get information? Well, one of the best places is at JSTOR. We actually have a login for you. Here is the link located here, and here's the name and password. So if you could log in there, that gives you a wealth of resources that you may have access to from JSTOR. And so once you log into it, you'll see the provider designation statement, access provided by Washington International High School and Middle Academy at the top of the page. So that'll let you know that you're located with our school. And then after you log in, you can register for an account so that you can save articles to your heart's content. So you can actually have your own, and then you can use this for any other classes, including English, math, science, or others that you may have that you'll be using research with. You can also use Google Scholar. Google Scholar databases are great for journal and book chapters. However, it limits the results that you can access to. Okay, so you can also have information found in government websites. University websites are also very helpful. Media from reputable organizations such as history.com is fine at the best. Britannica is okay for things like background information. So because those are all things like encyclopedias, and those are things that were great when you were in fifth grade, but now we have to move beyond that. So media organizations like CNN, that would be reputable. Even yes, Fox. The news outlets. Some of those things are going to be reputable organizations as well. But anything that's media oriented should be okay. Actual books about the subject matter you're talking about are great. Textbooks are pretty okay to get some background information. National Geographic's pretty good, and incredible news organizations. But make sure that you define yourself and make sure you understand what it means to be credible. So this particular slide is about everything on what to avoid, things you do not want to do. Do not go to anybody's blog. That is someone's opinion, and no one wants to read about it. K-12 school websites and Weebly's, that's, those are kids, that are putting things out there for an assignment or something like that, or even a teacher is using it for some kind of thing, so it's not credible at all. Someone else's Prezi or Google Slides, that is just someone, you found it when you did a Google search and someone had their Prezi out there. That person's Prezi is out there, but that teacher may have given them a D on it, so don't use it. Random YouTube videos, okay? It's okay if they're made by like PBS or Crash Course or History Channel or something like that. So if it's like a reputable YouTube channel that's associated with that, then it's okay. And it's okay if you use primary sources like speeches and interviews. So if there's a clip of an interview by Nelson Mandela, right after he was elected president, that would be okay, because that's what could be considered a primary source. Wikipedia, you just don't even forget it exists. Memes, really? I'm not even going to elaborate. And random websites with articles and lists. If someone has a website, they're randomly selecting articles, obviously, that are going to support their vantage point. So it really does have a huge bias. So please avoid them. So in this particular slide, we're going to give you some database and Google search tips and tricks. So we're going to give you some tricks of the trade here. So try searching in terms of trying to look for information. Try searching for key topics as possible subpoints. Typing in your research question does not usually give you some good information. So don't just type your research topic, your research question into Google. It's not going to give you what you're looking for. If you can find the answer to your question by searching it, then it probably is not a good question. So if you can type in your research question and boom, there's actually an answer, then that's not a good research question. So you may need to rethink that. It does help to know a little bit about your topic that you're thinking about researching. So if, and this is where Wikipedia can become a positive thing. Wikipedia is a helpful to get basic knowledge. It is not something that you want to use as a resource. So you can use Wikipedia to look up and get some basic background information about your topic, and that's perfectly fine because you're just reading it to gain information. You can also double check in the citations at the bottom of Wikipedia, because there are some Wikipedia pages that do have legitimate links on them. And if they have legitimate links on them, click on them and they will actually take you to a very legitimate article that may actually become useful. So this is how Wikipedia could become a useful tool for you if you double check those citations at the bottom of the page and click on just make sure that they're legitimate articles, and many times they are. So here's the answer to the biggest question that everybody has. How many sources do I need? Here's your answer, 13 to 15. Okay, the absolute minimum is 10. Though your paper will be considered undersourced. So yes, if you have 10 sources, we will take it, we will grade it. But please understand that by IB standards, it could be considered undersourced by some people. And we leave it up to them to make that decision. So someone reading your paper, if they're teaching IB history in France, they may consider your paper undersourced. I can't help that. Okay? So several of your sources should be books. So again, you have access to those electronic books on JSTOR and Google Scholar. So you do not have to physically go to a library. Ebooks will count as a book. So write that down. If you didn't hear anything else in this video, ebooks count as a book. Several should be also from academic journal articles. Websites like history.com and Britannica should be used sparingly. What that means is very few. And so I would actually try to avoid it if at all costs, because that actually lowers the academic credibility of your paper. Not that history.com and Britannica are not great sources, they are, but it does indicate that you do not have a stronger grasp of in-depth research, and so I would rather encourage you to avoid those sources. Use them as background information, yes, but try to avoid them if you're trying to use them as sources for your paper. Several of these should be primary sources, so you should have some type of primary source that you're referring to. And these are not easy to find, and we recognize that primary sources are not easy to find, so you should have maybe one. You should definitely have at least one, maybe two if you can possibly squeeze it out. So how do you keep track of your sources? Well, one, you have places so you can keep track of your sources in your workbook, so that is available for you. You can keep track of it in the evidence spreadsheet, which there is a link that we provided for you in Google Classroom. You can also do it in Google Doc that you can actually turn into your bibliography. So if you choose option 3, you can actually kind of kill two birds with one stone, because if it is in a Google Doc, then you can also eventually, towards the end of the process, you can go ahead and turn that Google Doc into your bibliography and not have to worry about it. Here's a little tip for you. Run all of your sources through a generator for Chicago bibliography citations and Chicago footnote citations, and then you can keep those in a document so that you can just cut and paste them as you need them. So that may be a helpful tip for you. And the evidence link sheet is going to be right here, and I will have that available for you in Google Classroom. For this slide, you want to pause the video for a second because these are questions to help determine credibility. So if you will pause for a moment and look at some of these questions, these are questions that you can actually ask as you're looking at a particular document to decide if this is credible, to find out if this is factual or if this is fake. Here are two other additional resources that may be helpful for you. A link for the University of Maryland and a link for Brigham Young University. These two sources will help further help you evaluate if a source is credible or not. So the question is now, what should I do? You should now complete part 3 of your historical investigation workbook. Remember, you must get teacher approval for part 3 before you move on to part 4. You want to compile a list of your sources in your workbook, find information for your background info, as well as information for your argument, as well as information supporting your claim and your counterclaim. So this is what you're going to be looking for while you're doing your looking for your sources. You want to find at least 1 or 2 primary sources, a newspaper article, an interview, an original document such as like the Declaration of Independence, or transcripts or translations, all different speeches, Dr. King's I Have a Dream speech, commentary from a journal or book written by a figure you are researching. Okay, so not about, but by them. Okay, so hopefully this addresses any questions about what you need to do moving further for completing lesson 1.3. And there you have it. This is the end of lesson 1.3, compiling your research. So turning those lesson objectives into questions. Can you locate and find sources that you need for your investigation? Can you properly log your sources into a format that you are comfortable with? And do you understand what types of sources are considered credible and which ones are not? If you do understand all of this information, give yourselves a slap on the back because you are doing an amazing job. Now, at this point, you want to complete any activities required for lesson 1.3. And remember, you cannot move forward until your teacher has approved your first 5 sources. So make sure you have 5 sources by the end of this week so we can move you on forward. Thank you so much and have a great day.